Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Truth Table, episode 75. I'm Paul Everton, the host here, and tonight's guest is Eddie Cornell. Welcome, Eddie. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hello, Paul. Thanks for being here, or thanks for having me, I should say.
So you're running in Beausejour? Beausejour?
Beausejour. Yes, sir. That's in New Brunswick. It's in the southeast
Could
area
you
of New Brunswick.
can you tell the audience a little bit about your military experience
Sure.
and what compelled you to get into politics in the first place?
Okay. I spent 22 years in the Canadian Forces. I was a gunner, and for those who aren't familiar with that, that's artillery, the big guns, and it was a great career. And I moved on to the auto industry, and in between there, I did a little policing as an auxiliary officer with the OPP. And I found myself at the trucker convoy back in 2022. And I just really didn't like what's happening in the country, the tyrannical overreach we all felt. And I was compelled to go to Ottawa, and the rest is history. And I just found that I was involved in a couple of big court cases, and you can engage your government in two places. Well, actually three, but the third one we're not going to do. I'll explain what those are. Is that you can engage them in the court, you can engage them in politics. I'm doing both of those. The third one is kinetic. We don't want to go that route. So we don't want to do any violence and fighting in the streets. That's not an option. That's not how we do it. We have to engage peacefully, and that's what the trucker convoy was about. And in politics, that's another peaceful way of making change in our country. And so I threw my hat in the ring.
Did the government take your big guns away?
Not yet, but they're working on it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they sure are.
yeah, they sure are.
So what was it deciding factor that drew you into politics?
Well, that's a difficult question. I really never had aspirations to be a politician in any way. It's just I felt I had to step up and you know make some voices heard, people's concerns, and everybody just seems so, I guess, complacent on how things are going. They don't want to stand up. I mean, there's a pretty hardcore group of people across the country that stood up and are still standing up, but the rest, I've kind of gone back to sleep, and it's really unfortunate because we're not we're not better off. Things are still the same, and I just found that protesting and complaining and waving flags, that's great, but it wasn't affecting change. And in order to affect change, you got to get in the places that I mentioned, and that's why I did it. And yeah, it's not something I thought I would ever want to be involved in, but here I am.
Yeah, I mentioned that on other shows that good people don't generally want to be in politics because it's such a hostile game. It's like a game to these people. And you look in Parliament, one person asks a question, and the opposition, and then the leader will just dance around and never actually address the question. Yeah, as a PPC candidate, do you plan to answer the questions that get brought to you in the Parliament without dancing around the bush?
Well, for people who really know me, I'm a pretty direct person. You may not like what I'm going to say, but I'll be very direct. I don't like to beat around the bush, and
Mhm.
try to make it so that I don't offend anyone. Unfortunately, with answers to certain questions, yeah, you're going to end up offending a few people. But I always try to be as honest and truthful that I can when people ask me a direct question.
No, I would agree. I mean, even if it's painful, I mean, if I know I'm going to hurt someone's feeling, I may, you know, make my answer gentle, but I'm still not going to be dishonest. And we have been seeing it for a long time now, and we certainly do need change. What about the People's Party that made you choose the People's Party as the party to run in?
Well, I looked at the platform of the Conservatives, and it didn't resonate with me. And then I looked at the People's Party platform, and I realized that's the types of things that I'm concerned about in our country, and it resonated with me. And I get a lot of
Mhm.
flack, people saying, "Oh, well, you people in the PPC are a cult. You're splitting the vote." I mean, you take a lot of incoming fire. I don't know why we're all fighting with each other. We're all trying to move the needle for our country to make it better. And you know,
Mhm.
how about this? Hey, maybe you conservative people are splitting the vote. Why don't you come on over to the PPC and vote for real conservative ideology versus the lesser of two evils and voting just so you can get rid of the liberals? Well, I think the honeymoon, should the conservatives win, the honeymoon would be over very quickly, and they'll realize very quickly there's not a whole lot of difference between those two parties.
No, no, and neither one did make life better or houses more affordable. Um, they the conservatives are like the hangover, and the liberals are like the party.
That's true.
But nothing really gets better. They may pull back, like Doug Ford, locally here in Ontario. He, stopped people from having to pay for a sticker to go on their license plate, like repaying taxes for the same product over and over and over again. You own the car, you own the license plate. I mean, and they were charging over $100.
Is that
Um,
still in effect in
and I have a
Ontario?
friend, yeah,
It is? Okay.
but that was Doug Ford, but he still embraced all the other stuff, made millions on the directional stickers on the floor in shopping malls, and probably saved millions of lives by that directional stickers.
Yeah.
The
Yeah, I got
People's
yelled at in
Party would
Costco
not.
one time for not standing on the exactly on the circle at the beginning of things.
The People's Party
Uh,
would not have done what happened to us. I don't think.
no,
You believe in critical thinking and doing what's in the best interest of the people around you. Now,
we're not
when
gonna
you
please
vote,
everybody. We try our best.
yeah,
We're are we gonna make some mistakes? Yeah, for sure. But we're doing our very best to make sure we tackle the issues that mean the most to Canadians. I mean, if you look at the record of the Conservatives, they pretty much voted for all of the major issues in lockstep with the Liberals. So I really can't see how they discern themselves as being the party of
mhm,
change or being different. I just don't see it. And you know, Pierre Polyev, he's a very articulate, intelligent guy, but to
yeah,
me, he's an empty suit. He's great with one-liners, and he can one up somebody in the House of Commons. But as far as policy, he's very light. He tries to take the safe route. He pokes his head up when it's safe to do so. He shows up for the photo op and then leaves. And all of the hard issues that
mm,
he should be talking about, it's radio silence. Axe the tax, was that really our biggest issue that we had to deal with in this country? And
mhm,
then the liberals cut the knees out from under him and dropped the carbon tax temporarily. And then where's that slogan now? I think he made a huge mistake by going after that instead of tackling real policies. And the liberals do the same things. They try to buy off of their votes by tossing a cookie here and there, and that's what they've done with the carbon tax. Don't kid yourself. Like, what if they get elected again? Which is, who knows? It could possibly happen. That that carbon tax is going to come back pretty quick, and it's going to probably come back and be higher than it was before. But people believe it. Oh, the carbon tax is gone. Look at the price of gas. Well, it's
mhm.
temporary.
Well, if anyone in the audience knows anyone that lives in Beausejour, the riding, please share this with them so they can get to know their candidate in their writing, because a lot of these um, debates, the People's Party candidates have been excluded, and even in the conservative debates, not debates, but what do you call them? The conservative rallies, they're removing people with "Make Canada Great" hats, which I don't understand why they
No.
would openly reject making Canada better
You know, they're
by
they're
not allowing
using the
people.
Trump alignment to, discredit anyone. Hey, I tell you, if you're wearing a
Mhm.
"Make Canada Great Again" hat, you're welcome at any PPC event or rally. Come on in. We're all very pro-Canadian, and we're not going to discriminate against somebody, for wearing a hat that has a message like that on it. I mean, it's just silly.
Mhm. And I think the people in your writing need to know that you're not like the other parties, because all the parties vote with their whip. If the leader of a party wants something, they all just fall in line.
They
The
do.
People's Party is not like that, is it?
No, as a matter of fact, when I was asked to join the party as a candidate, I said to Maxime Bernier, I asked him a question: "Do I have to toe the party line and stay within the guardrails? Because that's not what I'm about." He goes, "No, you're free to speak any way that you want and speak about anything." And I was like, "Okay, that's fantastic," because um, in the other parties, you're told what you can and what you can't say. As a matter of fact, back to the different debates that you were mentioning and the town halls, I'm getting word from across the country that conservative candidates are declining to participate. I don't know if that's because the People's Party of Canada is there. I'm not sure what their tactic is, but they've been declining debates right across the country.
Yeah, in Burlington here in Ontario, they said they canceled it, but
Yeah,
they didn't. They just canceled the People's Party candidate, and then they lied about the protest, which was just gathering basically with flags waving and a tent with Michael Bader's name on it.
right.
But everyone, the church, everyone, they did the old insurrection kind of thing, a threat to society, a danger. Oh,
It's
the
it, it
People's Party, will they bring common sense back to the politics?
like people want to live in a democracy. You may not agree with something I say or what our party says, but shouldn't you have the ability or the right to hear what we have to say? I mean, you
Mhm.
can choose who you vote for at the ballot box, but shouldn't everybody that is a party have a voice instead of being locked out? That's not democracy. That's not how it's supposed to work. And people seem fine with that. I mean, are
Mhm.
we rapidly becoming a Marxist communist country? I don't know. I hope not,
It's
but
it seems like it. It seems like the parties are harmonizing into each other, where they're all in lockstep together. There's they just pretend. They pretend to be enemies, but they're not. They're just it's like a five color Marxist game that they play against us, because nobody has made anything better. Nobody has stood up for the people in there to stop things from happening. Like my friend Kirk Reese, he's a whistleblower. I don't know why this keeps changing when I. There we go. Now, Bill C 290, I believe, is whistleblower protection.
yeah,
Will the PPC party uh, protect whistleblowers?
yeah, they will. Because the way the culture is in society here in Canada now is that the whistleblowers are the ones that are punished, not the people that are actually committing the offense. And that's not the way it's supposed to work. I mean, if you're divulging national secrets and that sort of thing, I understand that, there are some guidelines, but I mean, when they're exposing criminality, they need protection
Mhm.
and we need to prosecute the criminals.
Yeah, as a lot of people would be aware, many of my shows have had whistleblowers, and they all seem to share the same um, theme. Where y- they're told to do something bad. Even the police force, they're told to do something that is wrong, and that by doing as they're told, they will get promoted, and those who stand by their standards and ethics don't get promoted. So they never see higher ground in almost every agency now. That's
So
the
true.
Rangers, and that's very frightening for me because these people are really supposed to be protecting us, and they're more into protecting themselves.
Yeah,
Their
you've
intent.
made a good point there. Yeah, exactly. We've seen that too many times. If you look at what happened during the um, the lockdowns, the way police acted on citizens, disgraceful.
Hmm.
You know, I guess in the police force, when you're in the rank and file, you take an oath to the Constitution of this country. But when you get into the management level, you take an oath to the crown, their heirs and successors. So you no longer, in a sense, have that loyalty to the people. Your loyalty is to the king. So the rank and
Yeah.
file decided that they weren't going to protect the Constitution of the country and protect the citizens. They turned on them, and we saw what took place. And it's disgraceful. It's very hard. I think it'll take generations for a lot of people to gain trust of the police force. And I'm not knocking all police. I mean, there's a lot of great police officers. I'm very pro police, but the culture and the management level of the police services across the country, they they acted in lockstep for the government and really imposed a tyrannical fear onto Canadians if you
Yeah,
didn't
they'll
do
pretty much go
exactly
with the
what you were
flow
told.
of it. The higher
Yeah,
ups, and even the military, there, as um, you know, seniority rules. You get an order from higher up. If you don't follow the rules, there's consequences, or not the
there
rules,
is,
but
but at least in the
orders.
military, you have there's a thing that we had in the military. You must obey lawful orders.
Yeah,
You don't
that
have to follow an
that
unlawful
yeah.
order. You can decline.
Hmm. And that's
It's a slippery slope,
important,
but
especially in the military.
very important. And if you
Hmm.
look back to the trucker convoy, um, the government wanted to bring the military in, and the military did
Yeah.
not participate. And there's probably a good reason for that, because a lot of people in the military sympathized with what was happening in the country, and they were probably afraid they would come over to the protest in our favor. So they decided that, yeah, we're not going to get involved with that.
No, I was
And
born in New
besides,
Brunswick,
sorry?
and New Brunswick. I was born in New Brunswick,
Oh, yeah.
in Campbellton. So I know that each province is different. Each riding is unique. What do you think about the People's Party platform would benefit the people in your riding the most?
Yeah, I think it benefit them immensely. I mean, I guess in the East Coast, and you being, born here, you would understand more than some, is that the Maritimes traditionally, have become um, very dependent on government money, and
Hmm.
that tended to keep the liberal uh, MPs in the power positions throughout New Brunswick, because the money was given for all kinds of social programs. Well, it in a sense created a welfare state, really, out in the
Yeah.
times. And
Yep.
this is such a fantastic area of our country that is underdeveloped, that has amazing potential, and yet, the mindset is, we will get our money from the governments to implement social programs, instead of creating a climate of entrepreneurial investment and using resources that are out here. So I think that you know, the economic climate could really tapped into here in the East Coast and really benefit the citizens of New Brunswick and the other maritime provinces.
Are you concerned with the mail-in ballots?
There's always
Because
concern because if you look at the last election, that 203,000 mail-in ballots were found, I think, a year and a half or so after the election, which would have changed some of the ridings and possibly the entire election should they have been counted. So yeah, that's there. There's a hole in the system for accounting for those ballots.
I'm very worried about it because
Yeah,
the technology that the government's using AI, and so they could definitely go on Facebook and find out who's doing what and who's voting for who. Because a lot of people are very proud about who they support, so they could easily use AI to calculate how many mail-in ballots they'll need for each riding to win.
that's
So
a
I mean,
possibility. You know, my
I mean, you
concern
have to
is
look at the
for mail-in ballots is chain of custody. You
Mm-hmm.
know,
Yeah,
and
yeah. Just
I think
for
that's really
example,
important.
well, in the States, in 2000, they found a lot of military uh, ballots just thrown in the garbage, basically. And they were all for Trump. So
Surprise.
yeah, I'm worried about cheating. I think we reached a point, like an end game of 2030, as they frequently repeat, that they may. Uh, I think some of the politicians must be under threat or compromised somehow, um, and that's a huge concern. It really makes me feel like our country has been usurped. And all these stories that I'm hearing about the military, the police, tells me that they have been usurped, and even in that part of our agency has been, compromised.
Well,
It's
yeah. I mean,
it's
you've
a
seen the
scary
report.
situation. Hmm.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Paul. It's just, yeah,
No,
I
no,
think
I'm
with, with the list that came out from the two RCMP officers, I think one was a former sergeant, one is a current serving member. It named
mhm.
9 MPs, uh, which one of them is the minister in this area, and said they were compromised. Um, we have 11 MPs that are determined by CSIS to be compromised and traitors to our nation, and yet we still don't know who they are. And the whitewash that we had for the report, the Hogue report, that they basically whitewashed it and nothing to see here. Wow, I think there is something to see there.
Yeah, yeah, the non uh, what do you call it? The fact that nothing's happening about it, and nobody's left their seats, is a real issue. That they're still there, they're still compromised, nothing's
Yeah,
changed. It's like, oh, what kind of power does China have over our country and our politics, where they have their own police stations in Canada? That's got
yeah.
to be against the law somehow.
But you look at all the things in this country. You know, you've got right now an appointed prime minister,
Yeah.
the head of the RCMP appointed, the heads of all the courts appointed, and they all
Hmm.
tend to come from, um, I guess, like-minded areas of ideology, I would say. And
Hmm.
there's an area there that could it be that they could be compromised and work together? I don't know. I would leave that to other people to discover that, and it has been discovered, but no one's held accountable, and that has to change. We need to have integrity in this country.
So if you get a majority government, which you should, you ensure the Canadians and the people in your riding that all these things are going to be addressed and changed, and so it doesn't happen again.
Yeah, I mean, change is difficult for people. They get very complacent with the way things are, but we need some pretty significant changes in this country. But I'll tell you what, I'm not here to tell people that what I'm going to do. I want people to engage with us. We have a policy, of course, but I want people to engage with us to let us know what they would like to see, in addition to what we've already stated as far as our policy platform, what we'd like to do. And
Hmm.
I think that's half the problem in this country, is our government doesn't listen to the people. They have their agenda and that's it. They don't, I mean, if you look back to the trucker convoy, all people wanted, when we were there, was a conversation to say, hey, these lockdowns aren't working. We need to stop this. And they would not engage whatsoever. So that's a dangerous way of thinking if
Yeah.
you're in power and government, that you don't speak to your people.
Yeah, and they lied about the truckers. The truckers weren't all against getting injected. They were against being forced to be injected. They sit alone in their truck. They're not
Yeah.
spreading anything except loneliness
Yeah,
at
exactly.
behind the steering wheel for 12 hours a day.
Yeah,
Oh man,
that was a really eye-opening experience. I was at the trucker convoy, which and that's all they wanted was a conversation. And
hmm
no one, not at any level of government, would come and sit at the table and say, "What are your concerns?" That tells you a lot about your government. Now, the way that it was, painted in the legacy media, it was that they were Nazi flags everywhere. These are terrorists. These are sadnists. These are people that want to destroy our economy and destroy our country. They're destroying monuments. And none of it was true. They were salt of the earth Canadians that came with real concerns. And you treated them like they were garbage. And it was a real shame. It was a real spot on
yeah,
Canadian history.
and a lot of it was recorded, so
Yeah,
there's evidence that it wasn't an insurrection. And even using that word is irresponsible
that's for
because
sure.
nobody took over. Yeah, because nobody stormed the Capitol and
Yeah.
took everyone's jobs and formed another government like Syria. I mean, we seem to support insurrections everywhere else. So our government uses our money to help take over other places like
And the
Libya
only
and
leader that
Iraq.
stood up during that time was Maxime Bernier. He was at the convoy the whole time as well.
Yep,
And
yep.
that took a lot of courage. I mean, Pierre Polyev, he showed up for a photo op. And
Yeah,
now
of
he
course he
doesn't even
did.
talk about it.
Yeah, and his wife was very vocal about stay home, keep your mask on, and she was all gung ho with the Marxist restrictions and policies.
Yes.
It's like all the policies nothing made sense.
No,
Remdesivir doesn't make sense. Intubation didn't make sense. People
none
died.
of it. And
Yeah,
now,
and
we're
just
slowly getting the information that the
yep.
governments knew that a lot of this didn't work, and yet they did it anyway. Man, I tell you, think about the implications of that. That even
Yes.
like, and look at the people that lost their lives, lost their livelihoods. I mean, this country was in terrible, terrible shape, and they knew it wasn't working, and you made people suffer. I,
Yeah.
I don't know. It's unforgivable.
It is, but and it was on a worldwide. This is everywhere. It was everywhere. The same program, the same illogical, and it's like they started their defying physics and reality in 9/11 when suddenly physics didn't matter anymore. It was thrown out
Right.
the window, and solid steel frame buildings all of a sudden fell on fire.
And you
But yeah,
wonder,
that I think
with
it
any
really
event,
started.
like, why can't you questions? And through the whole thing, it was like the science is settled. Well, science is never settled. I mean, it's always open for interpretation and further
Absolutely.
investigation. But no, the science is settled, and you'll do what you're told. So this globalism thing is not working. If you notice, Keir Starmer came out and said globalism doesn't work. So maybe things are
Mhm.
starting to turn back the other way. We know globalism doesn't work, and all of these globalists wanted to dominate the world and impose their will on sovereign nations like ours and act on the benefit of someone else versus self. So we have to look after Canada first, and that's the policy of the PPC, is that we want to look after Canada first, and we're going to pull out of the Paris Climate Accord. We're not into climate hysteria. Do we believe in
Mhm.
climate change? Yes, climate is changing, no doubt about it. That happens, but carbon taxes and climate hysteria is not going to solve the problem.
Yeah, that's like another play on words because it changes like by the second. It's always
Yeah,
changing.
yep. But
But
they've
we're
got
not the
people very
creator.
scared, that the world's going to end because of. But think about this: we've got,
It's
this is one of the biggest issues people are talking about is climate change. We have bigger issues at the root of problems in our country: homelessness. We've got drugs. We've got crime. We have a housing issue. We have an immigration issue. These need to be addressed, and by them taking money for climate change, will that really make a difference? Will it? I don't know. I don't think it will, because they'll just put it into general revenue and award their friends contracts that, like with what happened with SNC Lavalin, and now with the high-speed rail link between Toronto and Quebec. I mean, they enrich their friends, and we're really not
Mhm.
affecting change. Am I a climate denier? No. The climate does change, and yes, we need to do better in a lot of ways to protect the environment. But taxing us to death because of climate change isn't going to solve it. It just isn't.
Yeah, removing the carbon tax was a brilliant tactic by Carney because that
Oh
was
yeah,
all that conservatives had. That was their whole thing. Tax the tax. And just in
yeah,
one stroke of a pen, boom, you're everything you were talking about is gone now. You find a new problem
yeah.
to
And
run on.
there's a lot of elephants in the room that Polyev is not talking about. If you look at
Mhm.
Maxime when he speaks publicly, he's talking about them.
Yeah, that's true. The Paris Accord, for example,
Yeah.
like they generally Polyev is just saying, "I haven't read it." Like
Well,
he just plausible
maybe he hasn't,
deniability.
but he
Yeah,
voted on
I
it.
may have signed it. I may have voted on it, but I didn't read it, and that's possible too.
Yeah.
It's quite possible. Um, but the UN is basically trying to also um, take over the sovereignty of all Canada through the cities, through the inside and locally on a local level with ICLEI.
Yeah.
And people don't, they just see it as, trying to do well for the future and all that, but it's an eventual takeover. Would you do, I don't know, would you be able to uh, do something about that on a federal level? Is that possible?
Yeah. I mean, the UN is imposing an ideology that is contrary to what we need in Canada. So, yeah, we definitely look at UN involvement and, um, infringing on our sovereignty with um, policies that are not a benefit to our country. So, yeah, that's
Mhm.
definitely something that is of great concern. And the WHO as well. That's another organization
Yeah.
that wants to impose rules on sovereign nations. We are a nation, and we should decide our policies and how we move forward, not some foreign entity.
Well, I would love to see a majority, PPC government. Just, I think a majority is necessary to take back control, and I think there's going to be a lot of pushback from all the people involved from the outside that have been pulling the strings that we don't see.
Hmm.
So I think that, I think it might be a dangerous situation. How are the people in your riding, how are they responding to you?
Well, let me tell you, it's a tough fight. I mean, they are difficult to come around to conservative values.
Hmm.
You face a lot of opposition because they've been so ingrained by the liberal policies and sort of the government welfare state that they haven't felt the same pressure that maybe Quebec, Ontario, and Alberta have felt in the inner cities with a lot of the things that are happening. So they're kind of removed a little bit from the reality of where the country is with some of the major issues. So
Hmm.
they tend to, still have the liberal mindset and keeping liberals in power because they give a lot of money to the different ridings and provinces on the East Coast, and that has to change.
Yeah, I would like to see the equalization payments done. To me,
That's
they're
that's
robbing
definitely on the table for
Alberta.
us. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it's terrible. And Quebec is just not developing so they could steal, so they can get all this money. But it's
they
really
get a massive
pillaging
amount of
Alberta.
money. I think they
Yeah,
got what $13.4 billion last year
it's
in
insane.
transfer payments. That's a lot of money.
Yeah. So there's a lot of crooked little deals going on there. So you're going to have to face these things when you get there. But I think you're the type of person, as a military man, that you're going to go in running. You're not going to take your time and relax and adjust to your new chair. But it would be nice to have actually honorable people with the title honorable minister. And we don't seem to have that right now.
Well, I hope that
You know.
happens. I'm not running to lose, but
Hmm.
I really do hope that
Yep.
happens. And I can tell you, I won't be spending a budget and redecorating my office. My office will be out in the
Mm.
street talking to people. That's where my office would be.
That's true. That's true. I mean, someone who really cares about people, and that's what I've noticed the last 5 years is for the first time, like honest, good people have said enough, and they're starting to run because they feel like there is no more option. A lot of people don't understand that the conservatives are not conservative anymore.
They are not.
They just pretend to be, and even in Ontario, like even provincially, it's the same thing.
We've
Now
allowed
the
our
NDP
our
and
sorry, Paul.
oh, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going
No,
to say
no.
we've allowed our system of government to be taken over by lawyers.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. The NDP in British Columbia passed. They're trying to create a totalitarian system, so they're really showing their true colors, as they did in Ontario with the Bill 67, or yeah, I think it was 67, the critical race theory.
Yeah,
So teaching white children to hate themselves, that
yeah.
you're racist and that's that. You know,
I mean, we
would
have
you
diverse
get rid of all
cultures
that?
in this country. We don't need to pit one against the other. That's not how we move
Hmm.
forward. And this woke ideology has to go away. It really does. It's destroying the fabric of our nation.
Yeah, I would have to agree. And with our each show, I try to bring these things forward because I'm worried about the power of the media to influence people, even to influence a lie, an
Yeah,
outright
I
lie.
agree. I agree. And that's why there should be no public funds to any of the media corporations in the country, including the CBC. Can they raise money on their own? People could donate. Sure, I guess that's the case. But to fund it with taxpayer dollars, no, that would end.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of a given when you see all this money, and Carney wants to give him more, of course. That
Yeah,
is quite potential to be compromised. But these, um, with a People's Party government, um, will use up all the protections um, that the media has and the pharmaceutical industry. Like it's do no harm. Is the People Party a do no harm party?
Yes, we are. You know, the media really is supposed to be neutral and unbiased, but
Hmm.
they've demonstrated in the last number of years that they have an agenda, and they're not really a news organization any longer. They became the propaganda wing of the people in power, and that's very dangerous because we don't need a Politburo in this country. We just don't. We need real media. And that's why media like yourself and many other independent journalists and organizations are under fire because they're expressing and showing the truth, which undermines, the message that the propagandists for the government are trying to put out. And that's why they come so hard and shut down independent media from taking part in things across the country. And I think that's wrong.
Yeah, I do think even doing what I do, it takes courage because
Yes.
you know you're going to have a target right on your head
You do.
just for saying. And I think if Carney wins, he does plan on cracking down on freedom of speech. He's going to ban X, I believe. Do you have an
Think
account
about
on
that.
X?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm at Eddie Cornell 9. Yeah, think about that you would ban a platform of free speech. That should tell you what you need to know.
It
You don't
really
have to
should.
go there if you don't want, but people should have the
Yeah.
right. I don't want my
And
government telling me
meanwhile,
what I can and cannot think.
I know what is that,
Yeah,
but they're also twisting reality, twisting
they are.
logic. It's like they're programming people to be illogical. It's quite frightening, really.
Very
Orwellian.
frightening. But think about it. I'm a little north of 65, and
Hmm.
for generations they've been indoctrinating children in schools to a certain ideological way of thinking. And
Hmm.
I think, I don't want to go too far on what I say, but they've indoctrinated a Marxist leaning culture. But the problem is
Yeah.
that they don't know that they're leaning to Marxist. They think that what they're doing is correct. And so
Hmm.
that makes what they've done for generations successful, because here you have a group of people that are Marxist, uh, following that trend, that don't even know it. And that's very scary. I was saying earlier to a friend that, think about it, in school, there's less competitiveness because everybody gets a prize, everybody gets a trophy. We're all winners. That's Marxist ideology. And it's basically, in kindergarten all the way up. And, I think there was an experiment a number of years ago where some students got A's, some got B's, some got C's, some got D's. So the professor decided, well, to make it fair and inclusive, we're going to grade everyone with a C. So everyone got a C. And then the next term, everybody got a D because nobody worked hard to achieve an A.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, we do have a lot of testing that has been done to show these sorts of things.
yeah,
Um, now, as far as the DEI ideology,
yeah,
um, I expect we are on the same page with that.
absolutely.
I think
Out
biological
the
men are
window.
physically, yeah, like biological men are physically different than women. Why hasn't anybody just said, let's have a trans team? Instead of putting biological men with women and calling them women, why not have a trans women teams? Let them compete against each other. I mean, isn't that logical to you? That way you're not
I guess
violating
that'd be
what?
another alternative. Yeah, I mean, that's possible. But, if you look at the way sports are going with men, just pummeling women. I mean, it's not working. You
Yeah.
know, I think a court case was just decided in England that either you're a woman or you're a man. Just because you dress like a woman doesn't make you a woman. So, I mean, you may feel like you are, and you may, you know, want to live your life like that, but there's going to be things you're not going to be able to do because you've made a certain choice. And unfortunately, you know, that's just the reality of it. And I think we've gone too far, the pendulum swung too far to let biological men into women's bathrooms and sports. And I don't think that's I don't
Dangerous.
think that's how we move forward. It's very dangerous.
Let's see, they started with defying physics, then they went to defying logic, and they went from propping up women with feminism to now going after women and their children by
Yeah,
allowing them to would you end the ability for children to um, surgically turn themselves into eunuchs?
that would be
Well,
over under
well,
the
no,
PPC. Yes. Yeah, and
you don't realize
just
here's
so
the
you
big
know,
party.
the conservatives and the liberals both signed on that that's okay. The PPC would never allow that, and um, there'd be um, you know, they'd have to be of age to make that decision,
I
and
agree.
and parents would have the right to know what their children are doing.
Yeah, imagine that, excluding parents,
It's,
letting a child make a life-changing decision. Like we have no representation right now.
no,
People need to understand that all of them voted for this, all 338. So I
they
don't care
did.
if they're the blues, the greens, the yellows. It doesn't matter what color they are. Every single one of them said okay.
See, the problem
All,
is
all
that the parties don't want to offend anyone. So, but really, by doing what they're doing, they're offending a lot of people, which isn't their intention. You know, they don't want to offend anyone, but they're trying not to offend the most vocal. But they're not listening to the majority. And you know, I think that set a very dangerous precedent in this country. Families don't want that. You know, if you talk to the masses of people in this country, they don't agree with that policy at all.
I think a People's Party majority would have not suffered any of these tariffs because the border would already have been under control. The fentanyl would have been under control. And that's all he asked. I mean, is that too much to ask?
That's You're right. That's all he asked. So what did our government do? They rented a Black Hawk helicopter, appointed a border czar. I can't even remember his name because I've never seen him since the one day. And he got a couple of RCMP guys dressed up in tactical gear, put logos on the chopper, took lots of photographs, put that out all over the place, and the chopper went back in 3 days. It was just a quick rental. So they didn't do anything for the border. It was all theater. And you know, Trump, he's not a stupid man. He saw we weren't doing anything. I mean, and Canada said, "Well, fentanyl's not a problem. We've only 1% of the fentanyl that goes to the United
Right?
States came from Canada." Well, that 1% was like 90 pounds, enough to kill millions of people. So
Yeah.
it's not the percentages. They're playing with numbers. It's the amount. And Canada is a very large producer of fentanyl. It comes in through our ports in BC. Only a small percentage of our containers are inspected. We have labs all over the country that produce this, and it gets moved into the United States through different sources. And they know this down there, and that's all they asked us to do, is show we're progress on that. But instead, what did they do? They doubled down. And then when Trump imposed tariffs, rather than coming to the table and saying, okay, let's make a deal, let's sort this out, we doubled down and retaliated. 75 countries right now that had tariffs imposed on them by Trump got a pause for days because they said they want to negotiate. They came to the table. Only 2 countries retaliated, China and Canada.
Hmm.
That should tell you a lot.
Yeah, Maxine basically answered the question the same. That yeah, there would be no tariffs
No.
because there would be no issue. And I don't think our agreements are fair. Look at the dairy and dairy industry. The what do you call it again? There's a name for it,
Yep.
for the egg, dairy, and milk supply management
Right.
mafia. But you two would get rid of that uh, kind of control over the farming industry because it would lower our prices to get rid of this.
Yeah. I mean, we have to look at all the internal trade barriers that we have from province to province. It's like dealing with
Hmm.
separate countries within our own country.
Yeah.
Do we really need that? Why are we still doing that?
Hmm. Well, I was honored to meet you at in Niagara Falls here.
Likewise,
Um,
Paul.
how long have you been back now? Since then, it was this month, I believe.
Yeah, I drove back to New Brunswick last Tuesday, and I've been back out here doing the campaign trail since, and yeah, it's gaining traction, and we've got the vote coming up on the 28th, so there's a lot of work to do.
And my issue is a lot of the slogans. 2030, you'll be happy and own nothing. I mean,
Right.
that's a threat. They're saying they're going to be able to control our emotions.
You know,
Now, how
if
can they
people
guarantee?
want to see where this country is going, get a copy of Mark Carney's book Values, and you'll see where you'll be. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not a good place,
no,
but people don't
no.
take the time to read it. It's it's very telling, and
And you would think that the globalists that pulling the strings would want a euphoric renaissance. It's like they're doing everything wrong deliberately. Anything that we wouldn't do. We wouldn't poison our family's dinner unless we want to kill them. But arsenic is, not one of the regular things like salt.
yep.
Yet our government has allowed poison in our food, in our
I mean,
children's
it's money and
cereal.
power to these people. It's all money and power, and it's how do I make my money? How do I make more money? And how do I stay in power? And how do I achieve more power? And the concentration of power that we've seen in this country and around the world, it's happening before our eyes. And, if you look at the last government under Justin Trudeau, how much he concentrated the Liberal Party and power to the Prime Minister's office.
Yeah.
It, it,
Yeah, he
they ran a
enjoyed his
tight
role.
ship.
Yeah, he enjoyed it. You could tell
Yeah.
he loved it, every second of it.
I spoke to sitting Liberal MPs, and I won't say their names, but they were some of the backbenchers filling seats. And here's what they told me. They told me that the party whip tells them you show up when you're told to, you don't say anything unless we tell you to, and you vote the way we tell you to. Other than that, you do nothing. You're a bum in a seat.
Yeah, the conservatives did the same thing.
Yep.
They threw people out that didn't vote their way,
Think about it.
even
You
though
get
they won.
elected in your constituency to represent your constituents, and what do? You get sent to Ottawa, and then you have to implement an agenda that's the opposite of what the people elected you to do. How's that?
Yeah, it seems.
It doesn't make sense.
Mhm.
It
But I
just
mean, we don't
doesn't.
have a lot of elections in 2030.
Yeah,
2030 comes fast. It's 5 years
it
from
does.
now.
Yeah.
So this might be our last hope to get back our country. So it's very it's hard for me anyway personally, because I care about my fellow man, and not just Canada but all countries. Syria, it bothers me that we're funding all these things, and they're killing white Christians. I mean, that to
The
me
world's in bad shape.
explains, yeah, and explains why we have critical race theory passing in our parliaments.
Yeah.
So our government doesn't represent us at all.
They've become our rulers instead of our governors.
Yeah.
and that has to change.
Yeah, but and and they're making bad decisions,
Well, it's
illogical
bad
and
decisions
harmful.
for us, but they're making good decisions for themselves and
Yeah.
enriching themselves, and
Hmm.
making it more difficult to um, criticize and question and get results. The liberals, here's how it works for them. They create the crisis, then they solve the crisis. So they look fantastic to themselves, but we
Hmm.
see them for who they are. And I mean, that's not how a government should act. Think about it.
No.
Just the carbon tax on our fuel. They created the crisis,
Yep.
and then they solved the crisis. So these are the same people implementing it and reaping it, and people buy it. And I'm so disappointed in a lot of Canadians that they just are so complacent and just
Yeah.
go along like because they've always went along. It's like the person that says, my dad and myself, all we've ever done is buy a General Motors car, and I'm sticking with General Motors no matter what. That's my brand. But you say to them, the car that you bought, your hardcore General Motors, because it's North American. That car that you're driving is built in China by General Motors. So people have to look deeper. Things have changed. Your loyalty to a brand, you might want to question and find out what is the value of that company or that politician or anything that you support, because things change. But people don't bother to look. They pick something and they stick with it. I've always been a liberal, so I'm going to remain a liberal. I'm a conservative, I'll always be a conservative. Well, the only ones that have changed in a lot of cases are those parties. They've moved to different territory. The liberals have moved far to the left. The conservatives basically filled the void where the liberals were, and there's very little
Yeah.
distinction between them anymore. And the PPC
Yep.
is now the true conservative party
Well,
with conservative values.
if 2030 is their deadline, I think the differences between them are fading away because the goal has always been the same.
Yeah.
How this happened, I don't know. I mean,
We were asleep at the wheel. We were complacent. We let them come in and steal the
mhm.
farm, basically. That's what
Yeah,
happened.
they were brilliant. They did a brilliant job at creating apathy.
It was what would you call the slow march? Just that
Yeah,
little bit at a time. If you did it all at once, people would have rejected it. But they just slowly walked their policies over, I'd say, the past
mm,
50 years. I think it started pretty much with Trudeau Sr., that we went down. By the way, he was a card-carrying communist, just so people
yeah,
might not be aware of that. And, you know, he walked in that policy and basically took over the Liberal Party, changed the direction of it to a more,
yep,
Marxist oriented party. And I know a lot of people would squawk and say, "Oh, that's not true." Well, it is true. And do some homework, and you'll find out that it's on the mark. And then the
yeah,
conservative basically has shifted more to the left.
yeah. Pierre Elliott Trudeau definitely betrayed us in 1974 when he took away the Bank of Canada's ability to issue current um, what do you call it, interest-free money to the provinces and the federal government with no interest. So that ended in 1974. It was almost like the in America in 2013 or 1913.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
1913 with the
Well,
Federal Reserve
you
Act.
look at Canada, we live on a fiat currency. We don't even have any gold reserves, nothing. We have no gold
Yeah,
reserves in this country.
he sold it right away.
Yeah, they're
Sold
sold.
all our
It's
gold.
gone. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're on the petrodollar, fiat currencies.
Yeah,
and now they
we
want to
definitely have.
eliminate oil. So, what are we going to have?
I'm just hoping the right people will hear what we're saying here.
I hope
If they
so.
really did care, they can find out all this information. Look it up. If you want to find more about Eddie and follow him on Twitter, he's right here at Eddie Cornell 9 on Twitter, and follow him before Carney cheats and wins and deletes us X from our ability to go on that platform. And they certainly might. He did say he was going to do that. So
Yeah, and
and he
that's
made
that's
you.
very disturbing.
It is, and knowing that they could cheat, and they probably will. I'm black pilled, but I'm very grateful though that people like you have put themselves up there, and I know they go right after you. They attack your character, your personality, everything, any swear word they could find on a. And they'll look back in your history on X and everything, just try to find any dirt,
They
any
sure do.
opinion, and they
Yeah,
use
I
our
mean,
tax money to do
it's a dangerous
it.
place to be a person that speaks up these days in this country. It really is. Political persecution is alive and well in Canada.
Well, if the Liberals win, this show might not be safe anymore to do something like this. I will have to change the truth table to the misinformation table.
I was at a debate last night, and it's funny you say that. The Liberal candidate in this area, which is Dominic LeBlanc, in my riding, he loved that phrase last night, the misinformation, disinformation phrase. You'll never hear me use that phrase. I can't stand it.
Oh, I can't stand it either because it
Yeah,
means the truth.
yeah,
Or is it disinformation? Disinformation is the uncomfortable truth.
yeah.
It's
And
uncomfortable for the government. What an
I,
absolute ridiculous statement. Either it's the truth or a lie. But disinformation
yeah,
is manipulating the people.
it is. And,
Isn't it
they're very
crazy?
skilled at manipulating the message. And people
Yeah.
need to pay close attention to what they're saying, because there's always an underhanded message with.
Hmm.
It's kind of like a Trojan horse. When they say one thing, you need to look deeper because there's more attached to it. They hit the button that, when they're passing a bill or an idea, that the spirit of it is, say, to protect children. But when you read down in it, that's just the tip of the iceberg. The real meat and potatoes of what they're trying to accomplish is much worse. And they use that to sell the items people don't look down deeper into. And that's how some very tyrannical legislation passes in this country.
Now, if you were able to give a message to your writing, specific to your writing, what would you like to say to them at this point?
I would say, listen, I'm not a career politician. I'm one of you. I'm not here to impose a way of life that isn't going to benefit us all. I want to represent you and listen to your concerns. And I want to be the voice that I carry to Ottawa to make those changes, to make our lives better in this country so we can live free and not be overbearing, have overbearing government telling you what you need to do in each facet of your life. We need government to stay out of
Yeah.
our lives. We really do. And that's going to be my job. I get it. I want less government interference in people's daily lives.
We must be special because we didn't succumb to the brainwashing.
No.
Like not everybody fell for it. So and I don't think we're the majority either. I think
I,
I
I,
think
I
80%
think
just fell right in.
I think we're unicorns walking in a herd of sheep, I hate to say it
Yeah,
that way, but
but I
we're
mean,
we're a very
knowing the
unique breed,
truth,
I think.
critical thinking is very dangerous.
It, it
but I
It
want to bring it back, and I hope you get your seat. We need
Thank you so much.
a voice. We need a voice, in Parliament, and a vote to say no. Provincially, we had Belinda Karahalios, who's the
Yep.
only one who stood for the parents and children
Yeah.
out of everybody. I mean, how depressing that is for me to know there was one person only that was elected that actually stood up for parents and children. And you,
It's like with school when you were a kid. Peer pressure is real, and you want to fit in with the crowd. Me, I'm not that person. I am not
mhm,
afraid to speak up and not be part of the masses just because I want to fit in. I want to do what's
yeah,
right, and that's what I've done all my life. And
yeah.
sometimes it's not the most popular position to take, and that's okay. But I stick to my principles, and that I'll never change that. Never.
Another thing people need to know is you will vote according to your writing in your best interests of your writing, not necessarily for the People's Party platform. Even if you don't personally agree, you will still vote with your people in their best
Absolutely.
interest.
And under the
People
direction of
don't know that,
Maxine,
eh?
you are allowed to, as a representative for your riding, you can disagree with the party leader and you can make those concerns and address those concerns, where in the other parties, there's just no chance. You toe the line or you're out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people need to understand that. That's the difference between you and them,
Yeah.
is that you will vote according to the best interests of your riding. You represent the riding, not necessarily just the party. And you will even go against the party for your riding. And none of the other parties will do that except in the independents who are
I know
just
I
by
absolutely
themselves
would do
anyway.
that. I would definitely,
Yeah.
if it was a conviction that I felt strongly about, yes, I would.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on the show, everyone, for watching. I want you to win. So get a seat so I can call you honorable minister. And
Thanks,
thank
Paul.
you. Yeah, thank you so much for
Hey,
coming
thanks for your
on.
time. I
And thank
really
you.
appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. And thank you at home for watching. Please share this with anyone you know in New Brunswick, and let your friends know we do have someone that will represent us. Thank you all. And come back. I will see you again at the Truth Table. Good night.